Before this video starts, please note that everything said in this video could change in the future, as this is a live service game and patches made after the release date of this video could alter or revert changes and features. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all enjoy the video. Hi everyone! Legendaries are Pokemon that everyone in Pokemon Planet wants on their team. Whether it's for their immense power, great competitive use, or maybe it's just because they want to flex a little bit on their friends. However, these Pokemon are extremely hard to obtain, and oftentimes when they are encountered, players end up losing to them because they figured they could handle them with whatever their team was. In this video, I'm going to be going over every legendary Pokemon in the game, how they're obtained, how to boost your odds of encountering one, the moveset that they have when you encounter them, the best natures and some general movesets for each legendary, the best Pokemon to use against them when you find them, and some strategies to make sure you catch it. I'll also be ranking them on a scale of S to D, similar to a tier list ranking. The rankings will be my opinion based on the legendary's accessibility and how well it can be used in both PvP and PvE. I've made a video like this before, however I felt it was time to update it since the move to Unity drastically changed the game, and I also missed Giratina in that video, so that was embarrassing. Before I start, however, I have a few things to say. First is that if you'd like to potentially have a chance to get into one of my videos as a character sprite, please follow the instructions and the video link in the description. Speaking of which, thank you so much to those of you that have participated and have made it into this video. I can't thank you all enough, you've been a great help in the production of this video. Second is that I'd like to apologize for taking so long to upload a new video, as well as for annoying the hell out of everyone with my community tab posts. I was planning to make a different video after I released the Unity video, however it came to my attention that the video was turning out to be far too long to be released within a reasonable time frame, and I also had some pretty bad audio issues, so that kinda lowered my morale. So I unfortunately postponed the video indefinitely and started working on this one. The script was like 30 or 40 pages long and it was becoming too tedious to edit, and I was honestly stressing myself out way too much. If you're curious on what it was about, by the way, it was a basics guide. There's a lot of stuff to cover. You'd be surprised how complex this game actually is. I hope that clears everything up for everyone. With all that being said, here's how you can hunt legendary Pokemon in Pokemon Planet. First, you might be asking the question, what exactly is a legendary Pokemon? If you've played the main Pokemon games, you'll know that a legendary, according to Bulbapedia, is a category of incredibly rare and often very powerful Pokemon, generally featured prominently in the legends and myths of the Pokemon world. So what does this mean for Pokemon Planet? Basically nothing. There's not a lot of story elements in Pokemon Planet, so legendary Pokemon in Pokemon Planet terms means that it's a Pokemon that has a base encounter rate of 1 out of 125,000 and appears in the legendary category when you do the command /Pokemon. They spawn at level 85 and usually have a pretty strong moveset. When you encounter one, the global message saying that you encountered one will be purple. They're highly sought after for competitive play and tend to be extremely good in gyms and Elite Fours. If you encounter one, you can't run from it. They are guaranteed to drop an extremely good item as well, dropping either a TM, an Evolution Stone, or an IV reset. Raikou specifically, however, also has a chance to drop a cat mount. Not every legendary is in the game though. Several legendaries are unobtainable to the average player, however are still fully functional in the game and can be seen in places like the Battle Tower. My guess is that the developers left these out so you couldn't just go in and sweep gyms with a Mewtwo or something. Most unobtainable legends are box art legends. The full list of legendaries that are not obtainable in the game are Mewtwo, Ho-Oh and Lugia, Groudon, Kyogre and Rayquaza, Dialga and Palkia, Giratina is available, we'll touch on that later, Arceus, Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus, Genesect, Zekrom, Reshiram, and the different Kyurem forms. Kyurem's base form is available, we'll get into that later. And Diancie. Now that we've gone over what a legendary Pokemon is, let's talk about actually encountering one. Some legendary Pokemon such as Victini and Zygarde can be rolled from different prize shops throughout the game. However, most legendaries have to be found through random encounters on a specific map. You can also potentially roll a Cherish Ball from an Elite chest, which will give you a free level 40 legendary out of this pool. However, the chance of you receiving a Cherish Ball is pretty low. I wouldn't recommend trying to go for any legendaries until you've at least beaten the Johto Elite 4, or if you have high enough level Pokemon, because again, legendaries spawn at level 85. The odds of you encountering a legendary without encounter boosts such as gold membership or honey is 1 out of 125,000. For those of you curious, the odds of encountering a shiny one is like 1 in a billion or something crazy. Currently, there's only a few shiny legendaries in the game. There's a shiny Entei, shiny Cobalion, and a shiny Manaphy that I absolutely know of that exist in the game. There's probably a lot more out there, however, those are the only ones I know of. Some of you might be looking at that number and going, holy shit, that's an extremely low chance. How is anyone ever supposed to be able to get a legendary? Well, the encounter speed is exponentially faster than a traditional encounter in the main series Pokemon games, meaning that you'll be getting more encounters per hour than you would in a main series Pokemon game if you were just running around. Also, this is an MMO and it's supposed to be super grindy. That's just how MMOs are. Let's compare Pokemon Planet's encounter speed with Pokemon Soul Silver's encounter speed. See how much faster it is to get several encounters in a row? So while it might take you forever to get something like a shiny in the main series Pokemon games, in this game, shinies are super freaking common because the encounters go by so fast. However, people still spend up to months and even years hunting these legendary Pokemon. Well, then that's still a pretty low chance of getting one, Andrew. Is there any way I can boost my odds? Yes and no. It's complicated, let me explain. So there are a few methods of increasing your chances of encountering a legendary Pokemon. Let's start with your base rate of 1 out of 125,000. The two most obvious ways are to be a gold member, which boosts your encounter rates by 50% to anything that's not common, giving you a 1 in 83,000 chance to find a legendary. Already a great step down from the original rate. The other obvious way is through the use of honey, which is an item that players can spread on a map and gives a 20% encounter rate boost to everything that's not common for 1 hour on the map. This brings your rate down from 1 in 125,000 to a rate of 1 in 100,000. Combining both gold membership and honey gives you a total encounter rate of 1 in 66,000. The next way you can boost your odds is a bit unorthodox. Being in a swarm actually boosts your chance to find a legendary. If the legendary you want is on a map with a swarm currently active in it, you essentially get a free honey encounter boost for 2 hours, bringing your total down to 1 in 100,000. Combining being in a swarm, having gold membership, and spreading honey brings you down to a total encounter rate of 1 in 53,000. There are charms that you can get to boost your encounter rate for everything that's not common. However, the chance of you actually obtaining a rare charm or a hunter charm is exceptionally slim since world bosses are now harder than ever to take down. There's also only a handful of these charms that have ever actually been found. If you're curious on the rates of these though, they're only a little lower than just having gold membership and honey. The last encounter rate boost that affects every single legendary is actually not something you can control. Every so often during events, the developers will put on a 2x legendary day. This usually happens for only 24 hours and mostly happens on holidays. For example, the 24-hour legendary boost during the Christmas event will usually happen on Christmas Day, and during the Easter event on, well, Easter. If you're using gold membership, have honey active, are in a swarm, and it's during a 2x legendary period, you'll get somewhere around a 1 in 35,000 chance to get a legendary. These boosts will affect every single legendary encounter possible. However, there is one more way to boost your chances on certain legendaries, and that's with enhanced items. Enhanced items are items that can be held by your lead Pokemon and will give you around a 20% increase to find the legendary that's assigned to them while your lead Pokemon is alive. Not every legendary has an enhanced item, however, making these only useful for hunting one specific legendary. You're able to craft these items by combining certain items with legendary bait. An item with a 1 in 9,000 drop chance from Ancient Dungeon, which is a sub-area in Granite Cave in the Hoenn region. Alternatively, you could just as well buy it off of another player. The enhanced items that are in the game are the Enhanced Feather of Moltres, crafted by combining a Feather of Moltres and legendary bait. The Enhanced Feather of Articuno, crafted by combining a Feather of Articuno and legendary bait. The Enhanced Feather of Zapdos, crafted by combining a Feather of Zapdos and legendary bait. The Enhanced Thunderstone, which gives a boosted encounter chance for Raikou, is crafted by combining 3 Thunderstones and a legendary bait. The Enhanced Firestone, which gives a boosted chance to encounter Entei, is crafted by combining 3 Firestones and a legendary bait. The Enhanced Waterstone, which gives a boosted chance to encounter Suicune, is crafted by combining 3 Waterstones and a legendary bait. And lastly, the Enhanced Soul Shard, which gives a boosted chance to encounter Latias and Latios. It's crafted by combining a Soul Shard, which is a rare drop from swarms, with a legendary bait. If you hunt for one of these legendaries and have the corresponding enhanced item held by your leading team member, your odds decrease to 1 in 104,000. You also have a slightly higher chance to get event legendaries. Event legendaries have a base encounter rate of 1 in 100,000. This only applies to Celebi, Volcanion, Yveltal, and Xerneas. With all of that being said, the best odds you can possibly get to encounter a legendary Pokemon with gold membership, Honey active, a Swarm active, an enhanced item for legendaries that have it. Let's throw in the 2x legendary events and you get a grand total of 1 in 22,000. Those odds are great compared to the base rate of 1 in 125,000. Although the chance of all 5 of these coming together at the same time is pretty slim, so you'll most likely have to deal with the base rate of either 1 in 83,000 or 1 in 69,000 if you're using an enhanced item, assuming you have gold membership active, which if you're hunting a legendary, you most likely do. And that's it. There's absolutely no other way to increase your legendary odds. Yep, no other way to increase. Okay, Legendless Encounters are a mess. The concept is that Legendless Encounters work by increasing your odds of finding a legendary by grinding in an area with a legendary on it. The more encounters you do in an area with a legendary in the spawn set, the higher your Legendless Encounters climb. You can check your Legendless Encounters by doing /LLE in the game. It seems reasonable, right? It's a way to pretty much guarantee that at some point you'll get a legendary. Essentially, once you hit 100,000 encounters without a legendary, you'll get a small boost to your encounter rate. After you hit 100,000 encounters, this boost keeps climbing every 25,000 encounters you get afterwards. It caps out at 600,000, where encountering a legendary is basically guaranteed. So for example, you'll get better odds at 125,000, better odds at 150,000, better odds at 175,000, and so on. How much is the boost? That's the problem. We don't exactly know the boost you get, or at least from my research on the forums, no one seems to know how much it actually boosts. The other problem is that we don't even know if this shit works in the first place. No one, to my knowledge, has hit the 600,000 cap, and once you hit 125,000 legendless, statistically speaking, you're already likely to have encountered a legendary. Once you hit around the 250,000 mark, you're already double over what the base rate is. If anyone's curious, from my personal experience when I got my legendaries, I got most of mine around the 60,000 to 70,000 mark. My Zapdos was 66,000, my Mew was around 60,000, my Latias around like 72,000, and my Shaman was around 40,000. For my Yveltal, Xerneas, and Heatran, Legendless Encounters didn't exist when I caught those, so I don't know. I definitely just got super lucky with these. I mean, seriously, check the top 100 Legendless on the high scores page and you'll see why. Next, let's talk about synchronizing your legendaries. Natures are an extremely important aspect of a Pokemon. It can determine whether or not you have enough power to kill another Pokemon or not, so it's very important that you try to get one that benefits your Pokemon's stats. Whenever I talk about what the best nature is for a certain legendary, you might be asking yourself, but Andrew, aren't natures random? And my answer to that is, to an extent, yes. This is where synchronizing comes in. Legendaries are extremely hard to get, so if you get one with a bad nature, it's a bittersweet ending, especially for the amount of time you put into grinding. Synchronize is an ability carried by a handful of Pokemon. Some popular ones to use include Alakazam, Gardevoir, and BIehstan. In battle, this ability passes on status effects to the opposing Pokemon. So for instance, if you get burned, your opponent will also get burned. However, we're more focused on its function outside of battle. When a Pokemon with Synchronize is in the front of your team, there's a 26% chance that the next opposing wild Pokemon will have the same nature as the Pokemon with Synchronize. This is great when you're trying to get Pokemon with specific natures. Thankfully, the developers understand how important legendary encounters are and gave legendary Pokemon an extra 10% chance to be synced, so you have a total of a 36% chance to sync a legendary Pokemon. However, even if you don't sync your legendary, there's still a small chance that it'll have the correct nature anyways. You can also sync rolled Pokemon like Terrakion and Deoxys by simply having your Pokemon with Synchronize in the front of your party while rolling it. You'll know if the opposing Pokemon synced if it has a green S above its HP bar. So for example, let's say I wanted to grind for a Latios. Latios' best nature is timid, so I would want to have something like a timid synchronized Gardevoir in the front of my party so that I have the best chance of getting a timid Latios. However, perhaps you're grinding in an area where Gardevoir isn't doing so well against the wild Pokemon. Maybe it's not one-shotting. This is where the Synchronized Stone comes in. The Synchronized Stone is an item that can be obtained from the Battle Tower for 15,000 Battle Tower tokens. Quite a grind, but it's for an amazing item. This stone allows you to synchronize wild Pokemon when your Pokemon with Synchronize is not in the front of your party. Simply make your synchronized Pokemon hold the stone and then put it in the back of your party. This allows you to lead with whatever Pokemon you want so that that the grind goes a lot smoother. This also leads me into my next topic: should you grind or should you run from wild Pokemon? This is a really common question that players bring up when they first start hunting for legendaries. I think it's really up to personal preference. You can weigh your pros and cons. Grinding gives you consistent profit through both money and experience, and you also have a potential to get dropped items from Pokemon, however encounters go by slower. Running gives faster encounters, however you won't be gaining anything from encountering Pokemon. Running also isn't guaranteed either. Running has a success rate of 95% unless you have the ability Runaway or your Pokemon is holding a Smoke Ball. So 5% of the time you won't be able to run away from wild Pokemon. This can be negated with Teleport, however, so if you have a Pokemon with Teleport, you don't really need to worry about the run chance. If I had to choose one, I would definitely pick grinding wild Pokemon. Next, I feel obligated to go over one Pokemon: Shedinja. Shedinja is hands down the best wall for legendary Pokemon. It completely walls a whopping 16 out of the 25 encounterable legendaries. With its ability Wonder Guard, it can't be hit by any attack unless it's super effective, making it great for Pokemon without a lot of coverage moves like Cresselia. Slap False Swipe on this thing and you have something that can easily whittle down a legendary's HP, making it much easier to catch. I also want to note an amazing strategy for catching legendaries. If you think that the legendary that you encountered might start using Struggle due to its PP lowering each turn, simply just refresh your game and the encounter will start all over again with the wild Pokemon's PP fully restored, giving you essentially infinite turns to catch it. This next strategy isn't so much for catching as it is for grinding. For some of the higher end grinding, there's a strategy called Flail Grinding. This is used for areas like New and Full Moon Island or Far Away Island. This is a strategy where you get an extremely strong Pokemon down to 1 HP by using Endure, then giving it a Choice Scarf or Choice Band and spam Flail to maximize damage. Common users of this strategy are Pokemon such as Slacking, Diggersby, Watchog, and Dodrio. One last thing that I want to note before we move on to the legendaries is the ability Illuminate. Illuminate is an ability carried by a handful of Pokemon that increases the odds of encountering wild Pokemon when leading with the Illuminate Pokemon. However, you will earn less money when you feint Pokemon. For example, if I'm grinding with a Watchog with Illuminate in my first party slot, then I will get encounters at a higher rate, meaning that I'll see more Pokemon. However, if you feint a Pokemon, you'll get less money than you would if you didn't have Illuminate. Some common Illuminate users are Starmie and Watchog. I personally don't really use Illuminate, however I can see the argument for using it. That's all for general information about legendary Pokemon. Now let's actually analyze every single legendary Pokemon that you can obtain, how and where you can hunt for them, and their best nature. Again, I will be ranking them on a scale of S to D to show you my personal recommendation on whether or not you should hunt these. S is a must hunt, A is a great hunt, B is a pretty good hunt, C is a meh hunt, and D is just stay away from this thing. These rankings will be my opinion based on their accessibility and how early or how easily you can get these, and their use in both PvP and PvE. These rankings and movesets are just my opinion, and if you think a legendary is worth hunting for, or if, for instance, you think a Pokemon is not worth using a move tutor ticket on, that's fine. My PvE ranking will be based off the assumption that these would be hunted sometime after the Johto Elite Four, so I will only be analyzing gym leaders from Hoenn and above. I'll also be suggesting Pokemon that you should bring to counter, wall, or just to grind in their specific areas. I'll be taking a lot of personal liberties with Leeds encounters, as well as citing some information from both Amy's guide and QAZ's grinding guide. Both of these guides will be linked down in the description under the sources section. I'll also be referencing several Smogon movesets. I won't be linking the individual movesets, however, I will be linking the Smogon website in the description. Movesets taken from here will be from the Sun and Moon category, as that corresponds with Pokemon Planet's movesets. Hi, this is Post-Editing Andrew with a quick aside. I would like to give a special thank you to Nikebeams. Some of you might know him, he's a pretty active player. He helped me a lot with PvP information for this video, so thank you, dude, I appreciate it. I would definitely recommend checking out his YouTube channel, he makes some great stuff. Also, with the recent move to Unity, a few of the legendaries have bugs and errors in their movesets. Here's everything that's currently different, but these are addressed as bugs, so they will be fixed in the future. Every moveset that I mention in this video will be their actual moveset after these are fixed. Okay, back to the video. Let's start with the legendary birds, Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos. These legendaries have a specific item that your lead Pokemon is supposed to hold in order to encounter these Pokemon, so I'll cover that very briefly. Each legendary bird has a feather that corresponds with each legendary. You have the feather of Moltres, the feather of Articuno, and the feather of Zapdos respectively. These feathers can also be enhanced with legendary bait to give you a better chance of encountering one. The way you obtain these is a little complex. You need to have a Pokemon with the type that corresponds to the bird in the front of your party, where you then need to grind in an area that the bird spawns in order to get a feather drop from a wild Pokemon. Okay, that was a little bit hard to follow. Let me explain it this way. Let's say you want to get a feather of Zapdos. What you need to do is have an electric type at the front of your team, go down to the power plant basement where Zapdos normally spawns, and kill Pokemon until you get a feather drop. Then, you can make your Pokemon at the front of your party, let's say your synchronized Pokemon, hold the feather to add the legendary to the spawn set. Once you have the feather and you have your first Pokemon holding it, do /Pokemon to make sure that the legendary is able to spawn. This is the same for Moltres and Articuno, except it's fire types on Mount Ember or in Mount Silver Cave for Moltres, and ice types in the Seafoam Islands for Articuno. The base drop rate of a feather is 1 in 9,000, so it'll be quite a while before you get one to drop. I recommend using a Compound Eyes Galvantula for the Zapdos feather. As for the other two, you can just use any ice or fire type. There's another place you can get these legendaries without the feathers. However, this area is locked to the end game, so you'll probably need these feathers regardless. Articuno can be found while land grinding on all floors of the Seafoam Islands while your lead Pokemon is holding a feather of Articuno. You can also get it through land grinding in the Water Temple. It also has a small chance to spawn in Altering Cave. This makes it one of the earliest, if not the earliest legendary that you're able to hunt for. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite Chests. I recommend still grinding with an Ice type while you're hunting for it so that you can maximize your feather drops to sell them off and make a bit extra cash. Otherwise, you can just lead with a standard Sync Pokemon. The best overall nature for Articuno is Timid, while some other good natures include Modest for higher attacking power and Calm for better defensiveness. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Blizzard, Roost, Tailwind, and Ice Beam, making Shedinja a great wall here as it has no super effective moves for it. Other walls include any other ice or steel types that can take its ice moves. Articuno is basically never seen in PvP or in the battle tower due to its meh speed and huge weakness to stealth rocks. Its use in PvE is also limited as it doesn't do well against anything past the Johto Elite Four, with the slight exception being Drake in the Hoenn Elite Four and Gardenia in Sinnoh. However, with coverage moves, it will probably faint before you can get any damage off. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Ice Beam, Roost, Freeze Dry, and either Air Cutter or Hurricane. However, I would probably stick with Hurricane since there's no point in wasting a transfer move ticket on this. For EVs, max special attack and max speed. Invest a little bit in special defense if you want it. While you can get it early, I'm going to give Articuno an unfortunate D tier since while yes, it's the earliest legendary you can get besides event legendaries, it doesn't really do well against anything at the time you'll be hunting legendaries. Moltres can be found while land grinding on Mount Ember on one island or in Mount Silver Cave while your lead Pokemon is holding a feather of Moltres. Like Articuno, it's one of the earliest legendaries you have access to. To get to Mount Ember, simply talk to Bill on Cinnabar Island and take a trip to one island. From there, head east through Kindle Road and Mount Ember should be at the end of the path. It can also be found in End's Castle in the first room, or it can spawn in Altering Cave. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite Chests. As with Articuno, I recommend grinding with a Fire-type lead to maximize your feather drops just to sell them off. Otherwise, you can just use a standard Sync Pokemon. The best overall nature for Moltres is Timid. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Heat Wave, Solar Beam, Sky Attack, and Roost. Walls for it when you encounter it consist of Flash Fire Houndoom, Salamence, Arcanine, Blissey, and Rotom Heat. Most of these Pokemon resist all of Moltres' moves besides Sky Attack, with the exception being Rotom Heat being able to resist everything. Slap Morning Sun on an Arcanine and you can easily heal up any damage coming your way. Moltres usually isn't seen at all in PvP since it has a pretty large weakness to Stealth Rocks, however is arguably better than Articuno due to its high special attack and pretty alright speed. I should mention that it does have a small niche in Tier 1 of Clan Wars being able to run choice specs. Despite that, however, it doesn't really have any real PvE uses in Hoenn or Sinnoh either, the only real advantage being again against Gardenia. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Flamethrower, Air Slash, Roost, and a 4th move of your choosing, such as Will-O-Wisp. For EV's max special attack and max speed. Overall, I'm also giving Moltres D tier since it only does well in one gym. However, it's kind of a better D tier since it can crush Pokemon weak to fire with its high base special attack in tier 1. Yes, you can get it super early, but I wouldn't recommend going for it unless you want to hunt it for fun, or if you have a specific strategy in mind. Zapdos can be found while grinding in the power plant basement while your lead Pokemon is holding a Feather of Zapdos. As with the other birds, this is one of the earliest legendaries you can get at, albeit you do have to beat the Johto Elite Four to be able to get this one. Getting to the power plant is as simple as going to Route 9, surfing down this strip of water, and taking a left. Once you enter the power plant, the stairs down to the basement are in this middle area here. It's worth noting that Zapdos cannot spawn in the regular power plant and can only be found in the basement. It can also be found in N's Castle basement or as a spawn in Altering Cave. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite chests. Again, like with the other birds, I recommend leading with an electric type Pokemon to maximize your feather drops to sell. Otherwise, just use a sync Pokemon. The best nature for Zapdos is a bit of a toss-up. If you want a PvP Zapdos, go for a bold nature. If you want a PvE Zapdos, go for timid. These two are interchangeable, so just use whatever you want. Other good natures if you don't end up getting either of those include modest and calm. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Light Screen, Drill Peck, Thunder, and Roost. Walls for Zapdos include Pokemon such as Gliscor, Rhyperior, Golem, and Magnezone. Each of these Pokemon completely walls Zapdos' moveset with the exception of Gliscor. However, Gliscor can tank Drill Pecks fairly well with its high physical defense. Zapdos is a fairly popular Pokemon in PvP. Yes, it's weak to Stealth Rock and gets countered by things like Garchomp and Gliscor, however, it's not as weak as Articuno or Moltres. It's got a great pivoting move in Volt Switch and can surprise ground types by using Hidden Power Ice. Heat Wave for Amoonguss and Scizor and you're golden. It can also learn Defog to get rid of Stealth Rocks and Spikes. Just having a PvP role bumps it up a lot in ranking. In PvE, however, it can do well as a fast, supportive Paralysis Pokemon against trainers like Juan, Wallace, and Crasher Wake. It can also dish out pretty hard hits with Thunderbolt or Discharge if it gets the chance, but loses to a lot of the typical ice coverage moves. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, for PvP, I would recommend the moveset either Discharge or Thunderbolt, Heat Wave, Hidden Power Ice, and Volt Switch. You can also use moves like Defog, Roost, and Toxic. For PvP, I recommend pretty much the same moveset except switching out HP Ice and or Volt Switch for something like Thunder Wave, Roost, or Toxic. You can also do some interesting EV spreading with Zapdos depending on your build. If you're doing a PvE build, full EV train it in special attack and speed. If you're doing a PvP build, you can spread your EVs between HP, defense, special attack, and speed depending on what you're looking for. Overall, I'm going to give Zapdos an A tier since it's both great as an attacker and a support Pokemon. It also has its own role in PvP, however, it's not as common as it was a few years ago. It's still an excellent legendary to hunt and you can get it very early in the game compared to other legendaries. Mew can be found roaming around Faraway Island. Faraway Island is able to be accessed by having an old C-map in your inventory, which can either be purchased for 125 Elite tokens from the Elite shop, or can just be bought off of another player, which, let's be honest, is probably easier than grinding up the tokens. Then you can simply go to the Hoenn tab at any ferry service and click Faraway Island. Faraway Island has 12 maps. The area that Mew spawns differs between days. For instance, Mew could be on Faraway Island 1 on Monday, and then Faraway Island 8 on Tuesday. Make sure you check which map it's on by doing /Pokemon when you enter the map, or you can check which map it's on by looking at the daily events chat in the official Pokemon Planet Discord server. The fact that it takes pretty long to grind up all those Elite tokens definitely knocks it a bit. As for a lead, I recommend either just a standard sync Pokemon with Teleport, or you can Flail Grind with Slacking or Diggersby. The best nature for Mew honestly depends. If you want something that's overall good, I'd say Timid since most psychic moves are special and you can also replace your current Timid sync with Mew. However, if you want something for PvP, it depends on what set you want. If you want a nasty plot sweeper, go with Modest or Timid. If you want something a little different, Jolly, Calm, or Careful also work. There's a lot of sets for Mew, so I would consult Smogon.com to see what nature works for you. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Baton Pass, Me First, Ancient Power, and Amnesia. Basically any rock or steel type like Golem, Steelix, or Aggron will be able to wall Mew very well. In PvP, it has a small niche running Stealth Rocks in combination with moves like Overheat, Ice Beam, Volt Switch, Psychic, etc. For PvE, its only real major advantage is against Maylene and Sinnoh. However, being able to set up with Nasty Plot as well as being able to learn pretty much every TM in the game means that it's going to be running a lot of coverage moves. Outside of gyms, however, it's got great utility when fighting and catching wild Pokemon. Its ability Synchronize lets it easily hunt for Pokemon if it has a desirable nature, and it can use moves like Thunder Wave to paralyze opposing wild Pokemon, making them far easier to catch. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, for PvP, it depends on your set. Again, consult Smogon.com. For PvE, I recommend Psychic or Psyshock, Nasty Plot, Thunder Wave, and another coverage move. I personally chose Flamethrower, however you can mostly switch up this entire moveset to fit your needs. For EV spreads, again for PvP it depends. For PvE I would probably go with a standard max special attack and max speed set, or you could opt for a more defensive spread. Overall, Mew is a solid B tier. It's a great support Pokemon for hunting, an alright sweeper for PvE, and has a small niche in PvP. I would definitely recommend hunting it if you're stuck on what to hunt. Now we get into the legendary beasts. Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. These are all found in the same area, Mossy Cave. Mossy Cave is an area on the right side of Dragon's Den that can only be accessed with the Mossy Key, which can be obtained by catching and registering 350 unique Pokemon in your Pokedex. The cave is segmented off and each beast has their own area that they can be found in. There are 3 caverns: the Thunder Cavern for Raikou, the Fire Cavern for Entei, and the Water Cavern for Suicune. You don't need any held items to encounter these, however you do have the option of enhancing an Evolution Stone to get a boosted encounter rate. Thunderstone for Raikou, Firestone for Entei, and Waterstone for Suicune. Raikou can be found in Mossy Cave's Thunder Cavern, which can be accessed once you have 350 unique Pokemon caught in your Pokedex. It could also potentially spawn in Altering Cave. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite Chests. I recommend leading with either an Alakazam, a Dugtrio, or a standard Sync lead. The best nature for Raikou is definitely Timid. Some other great natures include Modest and Rash. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Thunder, Rain Dance, Extrasensory, and Calm Mind. Shedinja walls this entire moveset, so just bring one and you'll be good. As for its use in PvP, it's actually pretty good. It can be used as an electric type setup sweeper with Calm Mind, Thunderbolt, and HP Ice or HP Grass. It also has a great pivot move in Volt Switch. However, with all of the specially bulky Pokemon that are commonly used, and Zapdos being a better electric type pick in Tier 2 and in tournaments, Raikou is really only prominently and effectively used in Tier 1. So if you're making a Tier 1 team, Raikou might not be that bad of an option. In PvE, it does well in a lot of gyms. It deals with gyms such as Winona, Huan, Wallace, and Crasher Wake, besides Quagsire and Lantern. Raikou is one of those Pokemon that does universally well in every fight regardless of the type matchup. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, for PvP I would probably go with Thunderbolt, Calm Mind, Volt Switch, and either HP Ice or HP Grass. For PvE, I would go with the same set, however you could probably switch between Volt Switch, Shadow Ball, and Extrasensory for the last 2 moves if you don't have access to Hidden Power Ice or Grass. For EV spreads, I would just max out Special Attack and Speed. Overall, Raikou is a great A-tier option. It can be useful in both PvP and PvE, however players primarily hunt it for PvP. Entei can be found in Mossy Cave's Fire Cavern, which can be accessed once you have 350 unique Pokemon caught in your Pokedex. It can also potentially spawn in Altering Cave and can be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite Chests. I recommend leading with pretty much the same Pokemon as with hunting Raikou: Alakazam, Dugtrio, or just a standard Sync Pokemon. The best nature for Entei is definitely Adamant. Some other good natures include Jolly and Naughty. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Fire Blast, Eruption, Extrasensory, and Calm Mind. Houndour and Houndoom while the entire moveset with Flash Fire. For PvP, its use is pretty much limited to Tier 1 of Clan Wars, where it thrives. Outside of that, it could potentially do well in tournaments and Tier 2, but it's not commonly used. There's a lot of fast ground types like Garchomp and Gliscor, and the threat of Azumarill always looms over it. However, it does well against things like Skarmory, Amoonguss, and maybe Blissey, so I could potentially see a case for using it in OU. For PvE, it only does well against Glacia and Hoenn Elite Four and Gardenia, Byron, and Aaron in Sinnoh. It has pretty okay speed and could probably take out a lot of these Pokemon pretty fast, however I would probably choose Raikou over Entei. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, for PvP I would go with Sacred Fire, Extreme Speed, Stone Edge, and Flare Blitz. I would probably use this set for PvE too. For EVs, max out attack and speed. Overall, Entei does pretty well in tier 1 and does alright against some gyms in PvE. B tier. Suicune can be found in Mossy Cave's Water Cavern, which can be accessed once you have 350 unique Pokemon caught in your Pokedex. It can also spawn in Altering Cave, and can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite chests. I recommend leading with Alakazam or Flail Diggersby or just a Sync Teleport lead. The best nature for Suicune is either bold or timid, leaning more on the bold side. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Blizzard, Hydro Pump, Extrasensory, and Calm Mind. Bring a Shedinja and you're good. In PvP, my god, this thing is a staple. Suicune is a great bulky water type with high defensive stats and access to moves like Calm Mind, Substitute, Protect, Rest, Sleep Talk, the list goes on. It also has the ability Pressure, making it a great Pokemon for PP stalling. Give this Pokemon leftovers and spam Calm Mind and you have an unkillable wall. For PvE, it's actually very good. It does well against Roxanne, Flannery, Winona's Mega Aerodactyl, and Charizard. It can tank hits from most of the Hoenn Elite Four members besides Drake, Rourke, and it does extremely well with its Calm Mind set in the Sinnoh Elite Four and works great against Bertha and Flint, besides Flint's numerous Pokemon with Solar Beam. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, for PvP I would generally recommend the famous Crocoon set, which consists of Rest, Sleep Talk, Scald, and Calm Mind. However, you could change this up if you want to. For PvE, I would recommend something like Surf, Ice Beam, Calm Mind, and your choice of a fourth move. Options include Extrasensory for coverage or Toxic. For EVs, it depends where you're going. For PvP, I would generally recommend splitting between HP, Defense, Special Defense, and Speed. In PvE, I would probably recommend maxing Special Attack and splitting the rest between HP, a Defense stat, and Speed. Overall, Suicune is very good in both PvP and PvE and absolutely deserves an S tier placement. It has great competitive viability and can even be used in PvE on occasion, even though it does take a little bit to get the Mossy Key. Celebi can be found during the Easter event on all maps. Event legendaries are by far the earliest legendaries available, as you can technically get them straight out of Pallet Town. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite chests. I don't necessarily have a recommendation for a lead with this one, so I would just go with any Pokemon that can kill easily, a Pokemon with Illuminate if you're only going for encounters, or just a sync lead. The best nature for Celebi is Timid. Some other good natures include Modest and other special attack boosting natures. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Leaf Storm, Healing Wish, Future Sight, and Heal Block. Shedinja Wall's the whole thing, so just bring one and you're good. In PvP, Celebi does pretty well in tier 1 of Clan Wars and can somewhat hold its own in other formats. It has its own ups and downs. It does well against things like Keldeo and even Chansey and Blissey, however falls against threats like Weavile, Skarmory, and Bisharp. In PvE, it can do well against certain Pokemon and certain gyms, however gets beaten by things like Roxanne's Mega Tyranitar, Juan's Mega Gyarados, pretty much all of Phoebe, Glacia, and Drake's teams, and Wallace's Mega Gyarados and Tentacruel. It struggles with most of the Sinnoh Elite Four as well. The only real battle I could see you potentially using this thing in would be the Crasher Wake fight. However, with Mega Sharpedo, Cloyster, and Greninja, you'd have a hard time using it. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, or if you just randomly encounter it because it's an event legendary, I would generally use the moveset Giga Drain or Leaf Storm, Psychic, Nasty Plot, and a fourth move of your choosing. This could be Recover, Dazzling Gleam, or Toxic. For PvP, I would switch this up a little bit as it gets U-Turn and Earth Power. I would consult Smogon.com if you're trying to use this thing in a competitive setting. For EVs, nothing too complicated, just max out special attack and speed. Maybe if you want to use U-Turn in PvP, use something a little different, but that's just the general consensus. Overall, while Celebi does have the perk of being an event legendary, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best legendary in the game. If this was purely on PvE usage, Celebi would be a D tier. Since it does have a role in PvP and can do pretty well in tier 1 and can hold its own in other formats, I'm giving it C tier. So I'll be going over all 3 Regis in one segment because basically all of them work the same way. Each of them can be found through mining when you're at mining level 75 and above, making them a pain to get. You can also double the encounter rate of these legendaries by mining in a gold rush. They can also be rolled from a cherish ball from elite chests, or they could also spawn in Altering Cave with the normal legendary rates. I don't really have a recommendation for a lead other than just a good water type that can kill other Pokemon while you're mining, or just a sync lead. The best nature for Regirock is either Impish or Adamant. The best nature for Regice is either Modest or Calm, and the best nature for Registeel is Calm. They all share the exact same moveset when encountered. Hyper Beam, Lock On, Superpower, and Zap Cannon. Shedinja walls everything, so just bring one and you're good. In PvP, they have basically no use. In PvE, I personally think they're too slow and don't hit hard enough to warrant using on any team composition. They tend to struggle against most gyms, however, I could potentially see a case for using Regice against Gardenia, but that's it. Regirock is a glorified Stealth Rock setter, and Registeel might have a case for it with utility like Stealth Rocks and Toxic, but that's about where it ends. If you randomly stumble upon these legendaries, because let's face it, no one's actively hunting for these. For Regirock, I would recommend the moveset Stone Edge and Stealth Rock, and the last 2 moves are up to your choosing. For Regice, I'd probably do something like Ice Beam and some other coverage moves like Thunderbolt. However, other than Ice Beam, the moveset's really up to you. For Registeel, just go full out on status moves. Stealth Rock, Toxic, Protect, you choose. You could slap on something like Iron Head for a damaging move as well. For EVs, since I hope you aren't planning to use them in PvP, I would just max out their highest attack stat and then maybe spread between HP, defense, and special defense. If you want to go super defensive, just cut the max attack altogether. Overall, the Regi trio doesn't have a lot going for them. They're late game legendaries with pretty much no use outside of just being an extra mining experience boost. Latias can be found roaming around the Hoenn region once you defeat the Hoenn Elite Four and obtain the Eon ticket. Using the Eon ticket is as simple as clicking on it. Much like Mew, it switches routes every day and can spawn anywhere in the Hoenn region except for, weirdly enough, routes 107, 108, and 109. As for a lead, I would recommend either Alakazam or a Flail Killer like Slacking or Diggersby, or just a standard sync lead. I should warn you though, watch out for Aquajet Surskits as they can easily kill your Flail Killer. The best nature for Latias is Timid. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Dragon Pulse, Psychic, Guard Split, and Zen Headbutt. Shedinja walls the entire set. In PvP, Latias is not seen as much as its brother Latios in tournaments and Tier 2, however it absolutely decimates in Tier 1, where Latios is banned. In PvE, it could be used as sort of a diet Latios, being able to Calm Mind sweep through gyms like Maylene, however it gets absolutely obliterated by Aaron's bug types in the Sinnoh Elite Four. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Psychic or Psyshock, Shadow Ball, Calm Mind, and Dragon Pulse. You could potentially swap out Shadow Ball for Surf if you want to, or switch Dragon Pulse for Draco Meteor. Slap on Wise Glasses and it might not be half bad for a few Sinnoh fights. For EVs, max special attack and max speed. Overall, it can still do well in gyms and wreaks havoc in Tier 1. However, it gets completely overshadowed by Latios in other competitive formats. Latias gets a B tier from me. Latios, similar to Latias, can be found roaming around the Hoenn region once you defeat the Hoenn Elite Four and obtain the Eon ticket. For leads, it's the same as Latias since they're found in basically the same manner. Alakazam, a Flail Killer, or a Sync lead will do just fine. Just watch out for those Surskits. Little bastards. The best nature for Latios is Timid. Some other great natures include Modest, Rash, Naive, and Hasty. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Dragon Pulse, Psychic, Power Split, and Zen Headbutt. Shedinja walls the entire set. In PvP, Latios completely demolishes Latias in the offensive department and can be a nasty sweeper thanks to its high special attack and speed. You could alternatively use a trick set with a choice item. Otherwise, Calm Mind Life Orb is the way to go. In PvE, it's a very fast and viable Calm Mind sweeper with its base 130 special attack and base 110 speed. However, it doesn't have any super notable advantages over any gym leader or Elite Four member other than Maylene. It may not have any super notable advantages, however will do well in almost any fight it's thrown into. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Psychic or Psyshock, Shadow Ball, Calm Mind, and Dragon Pulse. You could potentially swap out Shadow Ball for Surf, or Dragon Pulse for Draco Meteor. Trick is also a great move for PvP. Slap on Wise Glasses or Choice Specs and you'll be tearing through gyms. For EVs, nothing crazy, max special attack and max speed. Overall, both the fact that you can get it easily after defeating the Hoenn Elite Four and its prominence in both PvP and PvE makes it a great team member for any team composition and lands it easily in the S tier in my opinion. Deoxys can be bought from the Vermilion City PvP Center in exchange for 7,000 PvP tokens. For its nature, I would highly recommend trying to sync for a rash or mild nature while rolling it. Other good natures include Hasty and Naive. Modest and Timid could work, but aren't advised as Deoxys can use several physical coverage moves. You can switch Deoxys' form by interacting with the rocks on Route 3. Attack form is used for both PvE and PvP and is all around a great choice. Speed form can be used in PvP and can run things like Stealth Rocks, Spikes, and Taunt. Normal form and defense form are basically never seen. I want to talk about PvE first. This thing is a monster. It is without a doubt the best Pokemon in my opinion to have when grinding in PvE. With a monstrous 180 base attack and special attack and a base 150 speed in its attack form, Ancient Dungeon, Water Temple, End's Castle, none of these stand in Deoxys' way. Psychic or Psyshock with Thunderbolt for coverage and Choice Specs will absolutely decimate most wild Pokemon. As for gyms, it does well against most matchups. Choice Specs Psycho Boost is a force to be reckoned with. In PvP, Deoxys in its attack form can tear through teams with moves like Psycho Boost, Superpower, Ice Beam, Dark Pulse, Psyshock, Focus Blast, Pursuit, the list goes on. Slap a Life Orb or Choice Specs on and you'll be wrecking Ubers teams. Yes, unfortunately Deoxys is one of the few legendaries banished to Ubers, however this does not discount its ability to absolutely sweep the opponent. You could alternatively go with the aforementioned speed form and set hazards and use taunt since it can pretty much outspeed everything in the game. If you roll this legendary, I recommend teaching it a variety of moves. The general set for PvE grinding usually consists of Psyshock, Thunderbolt, Teleport, and a fourth move. I usually opt for either Ice Beam or Energy Ball depending on where I'm grinding. For PvP, go nuts with the moveset. For EVs, max special attack and max speed with the extra 4 put into attack. Overall, Deoxys may just single-handedly be the best legendary Pokemon available. While yes, it may seem extremely hard to obtain at first glance, you actually don't need a PvP team to roll one. You can get participation tokens and roll one by not doing anything other than just showing up to the tournaments that happen Monday through Friday. It rips through gyms, wild Pokemon, and other players' teams. Immediate S tier. Jirachi can be rolled at the front desk philanthropist shop in Silphco and Saffron City in exchange for 200,000 philanthropist points. For natures, I would recommend either Jolly or Careful depending on what you're planning to use. In PvP, Jirachi has a prominent role as a wish Pokemon. It can also run things such as Stealth Rocks with leftovers or attacking moves with Choice Scarf. It completely counters Clefable as well, which is a highly used defensive Pokemon in PvP. It can also do well against Latios. With its ability Serene Grace, it gives Iron Head and Zen Headbutt a whopping 60% chance to flinch the opponent, as well as giving Body Slam a 60% chance to paralyze. In PvE, you could probably do well against Roxanne and Glacia in Hoenn and Rourke and Candace in Sinnoh. If you roll this legendary, I definitely recommend putting Iron Head and U-Turn on it. The rest is up to you. Protect, Stealth Rock, Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Zen Headbutt, Body Slam, Wish, Toxic, etc. For EVs, it depends. If you want a more offensive Jirachi, max attack and max speed. If you want a more defensive Jirachi, split between HP, defense, and special defense. Overall, Jirachi is a great Pokemon that counters a lot of common threats in PvP and can do pretty well in PvE against certain gyms. A well-deserved A tier, albeit it's pretty hard to obtain for the average player, so it's like a low A. Shaman can be found in Flower Paradise north of Route 224, making it somewhat hard to get to. It could also potentially spawn in Altering Cave. Unfortunately, Shaman is only able to be in its land form and is unable to change into its sky form. For leads, Alakazam and any Flail lead will work, as well as a general Sync lead. The best nature for Shaman is Timid. Modest and Naive are also pretty good. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Sweet Kiss, Energy Ball, Aromatherapy, and Air Slash. Pretty much any super defensive steel type can wall it like Ferrothorn or Magnezone. In PvP, Shaman is pretty much never used. Can't say much else. In PvE, we're only looking at the Sinnoh Elite Four and Unova. I could see it doing well against Bertha's Crocodile and Gastrodon, and it might be able to deal some damage against Lucian, but that's it for the Sinnoh Elite Four. In Unova, I can't see the team, so this will be mostly guessing. Shaman might be an alright Pokemon to use against Marlin and Clay, but that's mostly where it ends. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Seed Flare, Earth Power, and your choice of a third and fourth move. Options include Leech Seed, Psychic, Hidden Power Ice, and Air Slash. For EVs, slap on max special attack and max speed, and you're good. Overall, Shaman might have potential in PvE if it was found earlier, however is pretty underwhelming as it is. As much as I'd hate to do this because I love Shaman, I'm going to be putting it in D tier. It's not as bad as the Regis or Articuno, but still doesn't do well in most fights. Darkrai can be found at New Moon Island after you defeat the Sinnoh Elite Four. For leads, I would suggest either a Choice Scarfed Alakazam with Teleport, or a Honchkrow with a Choice Band and an attack-boosting nature with Drill Peck and Sucker Punch. On the more expensive side, Yveltal with a Flying Gem and an attack-boosting nature is just a better Honchkrow, and a plus speed Deoxys can use Psychic and Hidden Power Fire. I would not recommend a Sync lead for New Moon as you can't run from Pokemon, so I would use a Sync Stone. The best nature for Darkrai is Timid. Hasty and Naive are also good options. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Dream Eater, Nasty Plot, Dark Void, and Haze. It's completely countered by any Pokemon with Vital Spirit or Insomnia, making Honchkrow more of an excellent choice for grinding in New Moon. In PvP, much like Deoxys, this thing rips and has been banished to Ubers. While it's not as broken since Dark Void's accuracy is only 50, its special attack is an astonishingly good base 135 with a base 125 in speed, making it a killing machine. Nasty Plot in combination with great moves like Dark Pulse and Sludge Bomb make this thing pretty good at taking out other Pokemon. Give it Hypnosis to take advantage of your ability and you've got a hell of a Pokemon. It's still stopped by Pokemon like Chansey and Blissey, however. Life Orb or Sash for its held item. In PvE, we're only looking at Unova. It does well against Chantal and Caitlyn and could potentially do well against Iris, however falls against Marshall and does okay against Grimsley. It's pretty good against most Unova gym leaders as well, not being weak to a single one, so you can set up with Nasty Plot and sweep fairly easily. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Hypnosis, Nasty Plot, Dark Pulse, and your choice of a coverage move. You could do something like Sludge Bomb, Thunder, or Focus Blast. For EVs, max special attack and max speed. Overall, Darkrai is an excellent late game legendary, however is unfortunately held back by both when you can get one and the difficult area where you get it. I'd like to put it in S, however Darkrai receives an A tier from me. Cresselia can be found at Full Moon Island once you defeat the Sinnoh Elite Four. For leads, Alakazam can teleport with Choice Scarf, or you can Flail Grind with Diggersby. I would not recommend leading with a Sync Pokemon as you still can't run from wild Pokemon. The best nature for Cresselia is Bold. Timid is also a pretty good option, however is less used due to Cresselia's bulk. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Lunar Dance, Psycho Shift, Psycho Cut, and Moonlight. Shedinja walls it completely, so make sure you take one. In PvP, it's a pretty good defensive Pokemon, and can either be ran as a support with Dual Screens, Toxic, and Moonlight, or as a Calm Mind Sweeper. It shines most in Tier 1 and holds its own in other formats. In PvE, it doesn't do much. Being available after Sinnoh only means it helps with Unova, where it does okay against all of the gym leaders, however suffers against everything in the Elite Four except for Marshall. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, the moveset depends on what you want. Go check out Smogon.com for some sets that you can run in PvP. For PvE, I would probably just do something like Calm Mind, Psychic, Moonblast, and a fourth move of your choosing. For EVs, max HP and max defense. Overall, Cresselia is similar to Celebi. Pretty good in PvP, sucks in PvE. Cresselia sits in C tier due to its availability and PvE usage, however this does not discount its PvP usage. Heatran can be found in Stark Mountain once you defeat the Sinnoh Elite Four and get access to the Battle Zone. For leads, Scarfed Alakazam can teleport from pretty much everything here, however it can also do well with a special attack boosting nature and choice specs. Deoxys is great here as well because, well, it's Deoxys. For natures, I recommend Calm. Calm is more widely hunted and used, but timid and modest are still great natures. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Fire Spin, Iron Head, Heat Wave, and Earth Power. A defensive Gyarados can wall it pretty well, and Chansey and Blissey also wall it pretty well. Others include Mantine, Gastrodon, and any other bulky water type. In PvP, this thing is nuts! It can wall pretty much everything super well and dish out damage to take care of physically defensive walls and other steel types. It demolishes Skarmory, Bisharp, and most importantly, Ferrothorn. It does, however, get countered by fast ground types like Garchomp. Specially defensive walls like Chansey and Blissey usually take care of it, however, it can just taunt those two to stop them from spreading toxic and spamming healing moves. Heatran can also trap them with Magma Storm to prevent them from switching. Couple that with an Air Balloon to stop ground moves or leftovers for passive healing, and you've got a hell of a Pokemon. In PvE, it does well against Sylan's grass types and Berg's bug types. And that's about it. It can wall other Pokemon and spread Toxic and set up Stealth Rocks, however gets countered by a lot of the common ground and fighting moves that are in Unova. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, your moveset depends on what type of Heatran you want. The most common is Lava Plume or Magma Storm, Earth Power, Toxic or Taunt, and Stealth Rock. However, you could switch this up for things like Flash Cannon, Protect, or HP Ice. For EVs, it's usually max HP with a split between special defense and speed. Overall, Heatran is a great Pokemon in PvP and can wall and status a lot of Pokemon, even in PvE. Heatran gets an A tier from me. I definitely recommend hunting one. I'm gonna be lumping Uxie and Mesprit together. Azelf is different, we'll cover that later. They can be found roaming around the Sinnoh region once you defeat the Sinnoh Elite Four and obtain the Lunar Ticket. Much like Mew and the Eon duo, they switch routes every day and can spawn anywhere in the Sinnoh region, except for weirdly enough routes 219, 220, and 223. In terms of leads, Alakazam can both teleport and kill on most Sinnoh maps. Illuminate Starmie is also pretty good. Watchog and Diggersby can also Flail Grind, however be wary of ghost types. The best nature for both of them is Timid, however I should say that for Uxie specifically, you could run a nature like Relaxed or Bold to accommodate for different movesets. Their movesets when you encounter them will be Extrasensory, Amnesia, Natural Gift, and Flail for Uxie, and Healing Wish, Natural Gift, Copycat, and Extrasensory for Mesprit. Bring a Shedinja and you're fine. In PvP, Mesprit sees absolutely no usage, however Uxie is a pretty good Trick Room setter in Tier 1. Outside of that, Uxie's not really seen. In PvE, since you get them so late, they don't really have any usage in any gyms or Elite Four members in Unova. Like, yes, they might be able to do well against Marshall, but there are so many better Psychic types. If you decide to hunt for these legendaries and catch one, for Uxie, I would definitely recommend the Trick Room set. For Mesprit, I don't know, Psychic, Nasty Plot, and some coverage moves like Shadow Ball and Dazzling Gleam. For EV spreads, for Uxie, you generally want max HP and then max out either defense or speed, depending on your set. For Mesprit, just max special attack and speed. As you could probably tell, these two are not very good, except for Uxie's Trick Room set in Tier 1. That's actually not half bad. Outside of that, neither of them see significant usage in other PvP formats or in PvE. D tier for both of them, but Uxie's still better. Azelf, on the other hand, is a different story. It can be found in the same manner as Uxie and Mesprit, roaming around the Sinnoh region after defeating the Sinnoh Elite Four and getting the Lunar Ticket. Leads are the same: Alakazam, Diggersby, Starmie, Watchog. As for a nature, your best bet overall would be either Naive or Jolly. Most players will sync for Jolly, however. I'll explain in a moment. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Nasty Plot, Last Resort, Extrasensory, and Natural Gift. Take a Shedinja to wall it. In PvP, it's most commonly used as a suicide lead. This is where the Jolly nature comes in. With Stealth Rock, Taunt, Knockoff, and Explosion with a Focus Sash, Azelf can lead, set up rocks, maybe get off a Taunt or a Knockoff, and explode. Azelf isn't used too commonly though, so if you get one, you might catch your opponent off guard. If you want to mix it up a little bit, you could alternatively run Naive with Fire Blast as well. In PvE though, it's pretty much the same story as the other two, except it might be able to hold its own a little bit better with high special attack and speed if you go for something like a Rash or Mild nature. Again, Marshall is your only real advantage. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the Suicide lead for PvP. For PvE, you could probably go with a mix of Nasty Plot, Psychic or Psyshock, and some other coverage moves. For EVs, with the Suicide lead, you should max attack and speed. However, for PvE, I would max special attack and speed. Azelf is a step up from Uxie and Mesprit and sees some competitive use, however is still held back by how late you can obtain it and the fact that it lacks a bit in PvE. This one might spark some debate, but C tier, unfortunately. Manaphy can be found in the Water Temple after registering 500 unique Pokemon in your Pokedex and receiving the Castle Key. For leads, Scarfed Alakazam can teleport or can kill with choice specs and a special attack boosting nature. Deoxys and Latios can also kill without specs, however Latios requires a special attack boosting nature. Slacking can also Flail Grind with a choice band. As for a nature, I recommend either Timid or Modest, leaning more on the timid side. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Aqua Ring, Dive, Rain Dance, and Heart Swap. Take a Shedinja or a Pokemon with Water Absorb to counter it. In PvP, Manaphy is a staple among Rain teams. Its ability basically makes it immune to status conditions while in Rain and can boost its special attack by a whole 3 stages with Tail Glow. Slap Leftovers and Surf on this thing and you've got a great Pokemon. In PvE, however, because it's found so late, it only really helps with the Unova Elite Four, and honestly, for the Elite Four, it's actually not a terrible Pokemon. Having a move that can boost your special attack by 3 means that you'll be at max special attack in 2 turns. I could see it struggling with Iris, however it learns Ice Beam, so it'll at least help. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Tail Glow, Surf, Ice Beam, and Energy Ball. You can switch any of the coverage moves for something like Rain Dance or Psychic. As for EVs, max special attack and max speed. Manaphy is a great endgame legendary that will demolish teams in both PvP and PvE. A little less in PvE. If it was found earlier, I would be putting this thing in S tier easily, however I will be putting it in A tier. Regigigas can be found in Ancient Dungeon after crafting the Ancient Key. Let's be honest, you'll probably not find this until you get to at least Sinnoh because the Pokemon in Ancient Dungeon are super high level and have boosted stats. As for leads, anything that works in Ancient Dungeon will do just fine, which basically means either Specs Deoxys or Scarf Teleport Alakazam. In terms of natures, I recommend Adamant. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Wide Guard, Payback, Crush Grip, and Zen Headbutt. As stated in QAZ's grinding guide, Regigigas takes multiple Pokemon to fully wall. Bellossom can Strength Sap it down to -6 attack, and Skarmory can use Iron Defense and Roost. In PvP, nope, just nope. Slow Start sucks. No way you're gonna be able to use this thing. In PvE, you might be able to get away with it in a few gyms, but I doubt it. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Return, Drain Punch, Knock Off, and another coverage move like Earthquake or Fire Punch. As for EVs, max HP and max attack. Overall, if Regigigas didn't have Slow Start, it would be great. But since it does, it doesn't do well at all. It's a D tier legendary, unfortunately. Giratina exists in the game via receiving a Giratina egg from a Giratina Halloween world boss. From what I've gathered, there are a grand total of 2 in existence, making Giratina one of the rarest Pokemon in the game, so the odds of you getting one are slim to none. Let's go over this quickly. For its nature, I recommend Relaxed. In PvP, it could be used as a defensive defogger since you can't switch its form, however I can't confirm nor deny this since I don't think anyone has used one in PvP. In PvE, it might be useful if you haven't already completed the game, which I would be surprised if you haven't considering you've built a world boss team to get one. Moveset should be something like Defog, Hex, Toxic, and Will-O-Wisp. Maybe another ghost move like Shadow Ball if you're doing PvE stuff. For EVs, max HP and then spread the rest between the defense stats. Overall, I don't know. Fuck it, C tier. The Unova Legendaries are all Pokemon that have to be rolled in order to obtain them, so this will save me some time on leads and counters. Cobalion can be bought from either the Vermilion PvP shop for 3,500 PvP tokens, or from the Battle Tower for 22,500 Battle Tower tokens. As for natures, it depends on what you want. If you're doing a physical set, I would go Jolly. If you're doing a specific Calm Mind special set or something, I would go Timid. Most players opt for Jolly though. In PvP, it's pretty good in all formats. It can wall Weavile pretty well, however gets countered by other fighting types like Conkeldurr. In PvE, it may be useful as a Swords Dance sweeper for gyms like Rourke and Byron, and does well against Grimsley's dark types in the Unova Elite Four. If you decide to roll one, I recommend the moveset Swords Dance, Iron Head, Close Combat, and either another coverage move like Stone Edge or something like Stealth Rock. Obviously switch the set for special moves if you're doing a Calm Mind set. For EVs, max speed and either max attack or max special attack depending on your set. Overall, Cobalion is a solid PvP Pokemon. In PvE, I could see a case for it being one of those Pokemon that doesn't have any super notable advantages but does universally well in pretty much every fight. It's not a bad roll. B tier. Virizion can be bought from the Elite Shop for 150 Elite tokens. For its nature, you should go with Jolly. Adamant and other attack boosting natures are also pretty good. In PvP, it's pretty much never used as it gets outclassed by other fighting types since its highest stat is in its special defense. It gets dual screens, however Light Clay is banned in tier 1, which isn't doing it any favors either. In PvE, it could potentially be okay for rock type gyms like Roxanne and Rourke, as well as Byron, and it could probably do some serious damage to Wallace's team if it doesn't get hit with an ice move, but it doesn't fare well against the Sinnoh Elite Four. If you decide to roll one, I would recommend the moveset Swords Dance, Close Combat, Leaf Blade, and Stone Edge. For EVs, just max attack and max speed. Virizion gets outclassed by a lot of stronger fighting types in both PvE and PvP, and the grind to 150 elite tokens is excruciating. Virizion gets a D tier. Now we get to Terrakion. Terrakion can be rolled from the Battle Cube prize shop for 6,000 competitive points. For its nature, I would go with Jolly. Attack boosting natures work as well, just not brave. Ew. In PvP, holy shit, this thing is great. Terrakion is an amazing physical attacker. High attack stat, pretty good typing, respectable speed, and the ability to take down Chansey, Ferrothorn, and Skarmory to a certain extent with relative ease are all great traits to have. It can switch into Bisharp, take a Night Slash or a Sucker Punch, then hit back with a boosted Close Combat. Togekiss, no problem, just use Stone Edge, given it doesn't miss. The only downside is that it falls to other threats like other fighting types, Garchomp, Alomomola, and faster psychic types like Latios. Slap a Life Orb, Choice Band, or Choice Scarf on this thing and you're good to go. It's also great in the Battle Tower. In PvE, however, it falls behind very slightly. Rock is not a great type to have when every gym has dual typings, boosted stats, and everything runs Earthquake and other coverage moves. Not to say that it's all that bad. It has a significant advantage in a sizable chunk of battles. Roxanne, Norman, Winona, Sydney, Rourke, Byron to an extent, Aaron to an extent, Flint, it does leagues better than the other two, and it does pretty well in every other major battle. Overall, not too bad of a choice for revenge killing and backup in PvE. Experiment around with it a little bit, I could be completely wrong. If you decide to roll one, I recommend the moveset Close Combat, Stone Edge, Earthquake, and Swords Dance. You could switch out Swords Dance for something like Stealth Rock, Toxic, or Quick Attack for priority. For EVs, max attack and max speed. Terrakion is the best Sword of Justice by far, as it's a lot better in PvP than the other two and can make for a decent PvE mon as well. Definitely an A tier pick, albeit a hard one to roll. Keldeo can be rolled from the Clan Wars shop in the Clan Building in Vermilion City for 5,500 Clan War tokens. I would go for a timid nature on it, but modest also works to an extent. In PvP, this thing is amazing. It has all the perks of Terrakion beefed up to 11. With pretty much the same stats and an arguably better typing, Keldeo is a great fit on any team. It can take down Chansey and Blissey with its signature move Secret Sword, and can take down Skarmory and Ferrothorn with relative ease. It can also deal with Latios, Garchomp, and Amoonguss as well with Icy Wind, meaning that it gets the edge over Terrakion in that regard. Bulky water types like Suicune and Alomomola still give it trouble, however. In PvE, it does fairly well. It deals with Flint in the Sinnoh Elite Four and Grimsley in the Unova Elite Four, and even does well against Iris and Cynthia to an extent. If you decide to roll one, I would recommend the moveset Scald, Secret Sword, Icy Wind, and the last slot is up to you. Calm Mind, Hydro Pump, Hidden Power Electric, Focus Blast. Keldeo has a lot to work with. For EVs, max special attack and max speed. Simple as that. Overall, Keldeo is great on any competitive PvP team, and sort of works well in PvE. It's hindered by its extremely grueling process of obtainment though, so you won't really see a lot of Hoenn or Sinnoh players with a Keldeo. Fairly good legendary. It's like a low A tier only due to its process of obtainment. Victini can be rolled from the Battle Queue prize shop for 7,000 competitive points. For its nature, I would go with Jolly. Some other natures that work well are Adamant, Naive, and Hasty. In PvP, Victini is pretty widely used. It's got great coverage moves and its amazing signature move in V-Create. It can take down threats like Ferrothorn, Skarmory, and even Chansey and Blissey, though bulky water types still get in its way. Rocky Helmet Garchomp is the most common wall for Victini. In PvE, it could be an alright Pokemon. It helps against Aaron and Cynthia in the Sinnoh Elite Four, and does well against Silent, Berg, and Marshall in Unova. To be fair though, if you're rolling a Victini, you're probably done with everything PvE wise. If you decide to roll one, I would recommend the moveset V-Create, Bolt Strike, and 2 other moves of your choosing. These could be Glaciate, U-Turn, Trick, whatever you think is gonna help. For EVs, I would generally go with Max Attack and Max Speed. Victini is great for competitive, and could potentially help with a few gyms and Elite Four members here and there. However, its obtainment method, as well as the fact that using V-Create lowers speed, definitely holds it back. Like with Keldeo, it's really only locked to the late or end game when you can reasonably build competitive teams. Despite that, however, it's still a pretty solid roll. B tier. Meloetta. Oh god, okay. Meloetta has a 1% chance to be rolled from a Pokemon box. It has 2 forms, but this doesn't really matter in Pokemon Planet since you can't change forms anyways. I definitely recommend a Timid Sync if you're going to be rolling anything from a Pokemon box. In PvP, it's never seen. That's basically all I can say for it. In PvE, since it can be rolled from a Pokemon box, you could technically get it pretty early on, meaning that you'll have a Pokemon with a base 128 in special attack and special defense at your disposal with a pretty respectable speed. It'll probably do some pretty decent damage all around in every gym up to Hoenn. Experiment with it a little, see if it works for you. If you decide to roll one, I would recommend the moveset Hyper Voice, Psychic, U-Turn, and a 4th move of your choosing. Focus Blast, Dazzling Gleam, Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, all these are pretty good. For EVs, I would max Special Attack and Speed. Meloetta has some early game benefits to it, however, once you get to around the later half of Hoenn, you might find yourself benching this thing for a better Pokemon. The only reason it's not in D is because you can technically get it right out of Pallet Town. Doesn't hold up too well past maybe Johto, however, I could see it demolishing if you get lucky early on. Kyurem can be rolled from the Clan Wars shop in the Clan Building in Vermilion City for 3,000 Clan War tokens. Since Reshiram and Zekrom aren't in the game, the other Kyurem forms aren't available. I would go with Timid Nature, however I've heard that some people roll from a modest one. In PvP, it can work on some teams depending on your team composition. It's a hard-hitting and decently fast special attacker. It can kill threats such as Amoonguss, Tangrowth, and can kill Heatran with Earth Power. I've definitely seen it used to great effect. Choice Scarf or Metronome sets do very well. In PvE, I'm only going to be looking at the Sinnoh Elite Four and Unova since the fact that it's locked behind a PvP wall means that you won't be getting it until the late game. It does well against Bertha, Cynthia's Mega Garchomp and Togekiss, Clay, Skyla, Drayden, and Iris. It could probably do well in most other fights as well. If you decide to roll one, I recommend the moveset Ice Beam, Earth Power, some Dragon Stab moves like Draco Meteor or Dragon Pulse, and a 4th move of your choosing. This could be Roost, Focus Blast, Hidden Power Fire, Flash Cannon, Substitute, or Psychic. For EVs, if you're going with an all-out attacking set, I would just max Special Attack and Speed. However, you can invest a little bit into HP if you want to become a little bit bulkier. Kyurem does pretty well in both PvP and PvE, however is held back by its obtainment method. It goes into A tier next to Keldeo. Xerneas is available during the Christmas event at Christmas Peak. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite chests. As with most event legendaries, leads tend to consist of regular sync leads, Teleport or Specs Alakazam, or an Illuminate Pokemon. The best nature for Xerneas is Timid. Modest also works pretty well. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Close Combat, Nature Power, Misty Terrain, and Psych Up. Bring a Shedinja and you'll be fine. In PvP, Xerneas is an excellent choice on an Uber's team. With a Power Herb, it can use Geomancy and immediately get a +2 in Special Attack, Special Defense, and Speed in 1 turn. Xerneas has great sweeping capabilities in PvP and is the absolute best Pokemon for the Battle Tower. In PvE, Xerneas is a great choice for any team composition. It can do well against gyms with Geomancy and Moonblast, taking out most dragon types with relative ease. Coverage moves like Thunderbolt and Psyshock help with poison and water types. With high special attack and speed, Xerneas lets any player blaze through the game. It's also just a generally great grinding Pokemon. If you decide to go for this legendary, which you definitely should, I recommend the moveset Moonblast, Geomancy, Thunderbolt, and another coverage move. This could be Grass Knot, Hidden Power Fire, Focus Blast, or Flash Cannon. For EVs, max special attack and max speed. Xerneas is by far one of the best Pokemon in the entire game for both PvP and PvE. It works great against gyms, wild Pokemon, and other trainers. The fact that you can only get it during an event both hinders it and makes it more accessible, however, is overall an extremely good thing. Xerneas, without a doubt, absolutely deserves S tier. Yveltal, similar to Xerneas, can only be found during the Halloween event in the Haunted Mansion. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite Chests. The same event leads apply here. The best nature for Yveltal depends. Typically, if you want the best of both worlds, you can sync something like Hasty, Naive, or Mild. If you want a special attacking Yveltal, say you want to spam Oblivion Wing and Dark Pulse, Timid and Modest both work great. If you want a physical attacker, say if you want to spam Acrobatics and Sucker Punch in New Moon Island, then I would go with Jolly. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Sucker Punch, Psychic, Focus Blast, and Dragon Rush. Shedinja walls this entire set as long as you don't attack it. In PvP, Yveltal is another Uber's team staple. Very high attacking stats coupled with decent speed, reliable recovery, and boosted dark type moves are great traits to have. It can pivot with U-turn, taunt status users like Chansey and Skarmory, toxic stall Pokemon like Suicune, and Oblivion Wing everything else. It's nuts. Give this thing a choice item or life orb and you'll be wreaking havoc. Not only that, but you can also run a defensive set on it with Foul Play, Taunt, Toxic, and Roost. It's also amazing in the Battle Tower. In PvE, Yveltal doesn't stop being amazing. Yveltal is by far one of the best universal grinding Pokemon out there, able to hit everything with at least neutral damage with Dark Pulse. It does great on maps like New Moon Island where having a dark flying type is absolutely necessary. It outspeeds and kills most things. It does universally well in all gyms. If you decide to go for this legendary, which you definitely should, I recommend the moveset Dark Pulse or Sucker Punch depending on your nature, Oblivion Wing or Acrobatics depending on your nature, and either Taunt or U-turn. For EVs, either max attack or max special attack and max speed. Yveltal is a legendary that everyone should absolutely hunt for when they have the chance. It's got great stabs, a prominent competitive presence, and great matchups with almost any wild Pokemon you face in common grinding spots. Yveltal joins Xerneas in the S tier. Zygarde can be rolled from the Battle Tower prize shop for 30,000 Battle Tower tokens. For its nature, I would definitely recommend Adamant. In PvP, unlike its two counterparts, Zygarde has not been banished to Ubers and can thrive on its own in the regular competitive scene, where it can be used pretty effectively. Dragon Dance or Coil, then Earthquake and Outrage everything. Slap on a Life Orb or Leftovers and you'll be sweeping. In PvE, it depends. With its signature move 1000 Arrows, it can do super effective damage to Pokemon like Skarmory that would usually be immune to ground moves. It might do well in a few gyms and help with some others, but that's about it. If you decide to roll one, I recommend the moveset Dragon Dance or Coil, Outrage, either Earthquake or 1000 Arrows, depending on if you're playing competitive or not, as 1000 Arrows is banned, and a fourth coverage move. Extreme Speed and Stone Edge are great moves. For EVs, it's usually going to run max attack and max speed. Zygarde isn't too terrible of a Pokemon. It has its niche in both PvP and PvE, however is held back by its obtainment method. Zygarde gets a B tier from me, however it's like a high B tier. Volcanion can only be found during the summer event through either fishing or conventional land grinding. It can also be rolled from a Cherish Ball from Elite Chests. Fun fact for you new players, Volcanion used to only be available through Cherish Balls. Heatran used to be the summer event legendary. Standard leads for event legendaries, Sync Pokemon, Alakazam, Illuminate Pokemon. For its nature, I would recommend either Modest or Timid. Take your pick, either one is great. Its moveset when you encounter it will be Body Slam, Overheat, Steam Eruption, and Hydro Pump. Bulky water types like Jellicent, Gastrodon, and Seismitoad usually counter it well with their abilities Water Absorb and Storm Drain. In PvP, Volcanion can work well on a few teams here and there. Having a water immunity is great, especially when you're going up against a rain team. In PvE, Volcanion does pretty well in most gyms. It's able to take care of Roxanne, Flannery, Juan, Wallace to a certain extent with Water Absorb, Gardenia, most of Aaron's team, Flint's team, Lucian's Metagross, Cynthia's Fortress, and helps a lot in most other gyms. If you decide to hunt for this legendary and catch one, I recommend the moveset Steam Eruption, Flamethrower, and 2 other coverage moves like Sludge Bomb and Earth Power. For EVs, max special attack and max speed. Volcanion is a great addition to any mid to late game player's team, as it does reasonably well in both PvP and PvE. It can also be obtained fairly easily. It deserves to be put in S tier. Hoopa can be bought from either the Battle Tower prize shop for 25,000 Battle Tower tokens, or from the battle queue for 5,000 competitive points. For its nature, modest and timid work just fine. In PvP, Hoopa has a niche Choice Scarf set in tier 1, and has a small Stall Breaker niche with Substitute and Nasty Plot in all other formats. In PvE, Hoopa isn't really used all too much. A 4x weakness to Dark and Ghost, and the fact that you can't change it into Hoopa Unbound really hurts it, as well as it being pretty hard to obtain. It could potentially help against Phoebe and Fantina's Ghost types, as well as Maylene and Marshall with their fighting types, and Lucian and Caitlyn's psychic types. And that's kinda it. If you decide to roll this legendary, I recommend the moveset Hyperspace Hole, Shadow Ball, Nasty Plot, and either Focus Blast, Substitute, or Knockoff. For EVs, max special attack and max speed. Hoopa is usually considered another one of those Dex Mons. It can be used to some effectiveness here and there, however is mostly outclassed in PvE by other psychic types like Alakazam and ghost types like Gengar due to its low speed. Hoopa unfortunately falls to the C tier in my opinion. However, I can't ignore its role in PvP. And that's all the legendaries that are available in Pokemon Planet. I should note that again, these rankings are my opinion. If you think a Pokemon can work, I definitely urge you to go and try it out. As always, if you'd like to have a chance of getting into one of my videos, please follow the instructions and the video link in the description. I can't wait to see everyone's entries. Once again, thank you so much to those of you that have participated and have made it into this video. And thank you so much to Nike Beams for his PvP insight. Before I go, I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching this whole video through. This took me months to put together, and I even had to redo and restructure a large portion of it, and I'd like to apologize for not meeting my own set deadline. You have no idea how much your support means to me. Thank you guys so much. You all mean a lot to me. With all that being said, I've been Andrew. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck on your legendary hunts, and I will see you in the next video. Peace. Good evening, everyone. Or morning, or afternoon, or whenever you're watching this. It's currently, yeah, I wanted to add this little section in to show you that I have a custom chat. I made this so that I can interact with some of my fans in-game, so if you'd like to interact with me in-game, shoot me a PM. I'll get you in the chat. We're all gonna have a great time. It's gonna be fun. This video is scheduled to go up on Friday. I don't know if I'll be playing Friday. I should be at some point. I'd say I'd be online about 4 PM Eastern Standard on Friday whenever this video goes up, so hopefully I'll be on then. Shoot me a PM. I'll get you invited. If you're not watching this on the day it releases, just PM me whenever I'm online. I'll get you in. We'll have a good time. Anyways, thanks for watching. See y'all.